Tonight, the great national debate about is Donald Trump a racist appears to be over. The debate started 8 years ago in earnest in 2011 when Donald Trump first started talking about President Obama's birth certificate. That's when I started using the word racist about Donald Trump on this program, and the word lie. But the American news media wasn't ready for either one of those words. It took the New York Times 5 full years after that to use the word lie to describe what Donald Trump says on a daily basis. The New York Times finally called Donald Trump a liar in September of 2016 when he already lied his way to the Republican presidential nomination. The New York Times was 5 years late on lie. But most of the rest of the news media was even later than that. By the second year of the Trump presidency, though, everyone in the American news media had called Donald Trump a liar repeatedly. The Washington Post now keeps an official count of Donald Trump's lies. References to Donald Trump as a racist slowly increased over time, but they were always met with challenges. How do you know he's a racist? And the American news media has gone through years now of hair splitting on the difference between saying something racist and being a racist, as if there is a difference. Historians will not go through the same struggle that the American news media has been going through for years over whether Donald Trump is and always has been a racist, an overt racist exactly like his father, who was arrested at a Ku Klux Klan rally in New York City in 1927. Historians will match Donald Trump's language as a presidential candidate in 2016 to the segregationist Alabama Governor George Wallace's language when he ran for president in 1968. And historians will see that it is virtually the same, as we showed you that comparison between George Wallace and Donald Trump during the last presidential campaign. George Wallace's campaign manager from 1968 came on this program to tell you that when he listened to Donald Trump campaigning, he was hearing George Wallace campaigning. Donald Trump's racism will be very clear to historians, and it will be in the congressional record because freshman Congressman Tom Malinowski of New Jersey has introduced a resolution tonight in the House of Representatives, supported fully by the leadership of the House of Representatives and guaranteed a vote. And that resolution condemns, quote, President Trump's racist comments directed at members of Congress. The resolution quote, strongly condemns President Donald Trump's racist comments that have legitimized and increased fear and hatred of new Americans and people of color by saying that our fellow Americans who are immigrants and those who may look to the president like immigrants should go back to other countries, by referring to immigrants and asylum seekers as invaders, and by saying that members of Congress who are immigrants or those of our colleagues who are wrongly assumed to be immigrants do not belong in the Congress or in the United States of America. The majority leader of the House, Steny Hoyer, says that this resolution could be voted on as early as tomorrow. No resolution like it has ever passed the House of Representatives. This resolution will help define Donald Trump in history, and the president's latest racist outbursts will help define Republican members of Congress in history. Tonight, the editorial board of the Charlotte Observer in Charlotte, North Carolina, published an editorial entitled, "Are You Okay with a Racist President, Republicans?" And so there it is, in a mainstream newspaper, in a headline, Racist President. The editorial says our leaders need to stand up and say something. But the editorial board pointed out, quote, the Republican Party is firmly Donald Trump's party now. They're bowing to the worst of who we are. And what about Trump voters? Are they okay with a racist president? If you're looking for logic in Donald Trump's latest public outburst of racism, and there might not be any, but if there is, logic would dictate that Donald Trump believes that his voters are not only okay with a racist president, but that they want a racist president. And that the more racist Donald Trump is, the more energetically his voters will return to the polls and vote for him once again. And with maybe a little help from the Russians, Donald Trump can squeak out an electoral college victory with absolutely no hope whatsoever of actually winning the most votes against whoever the Democrats nominated. The new NBC Wall Street Journal poll, which we will discuss later in this hour, shows the 4 top Democratic candidates for president beating Donald Trump in one-on-one polling. Donald Trump doesn't want to run against any of those 4 candidates. Instead, he wants to run against 4 members of the House of Representatives who are not running for president, who are all women of color. They held a joint press conference this afternoon to respond to Donald Trump's racist attacks against them.
We want to get back to the business of the American people and why we were sent here, reducing the cost of prescription drugs, addressing the public health crisis and epidemic that is gun violence, addressing the racial wealth gap, and yes, making sure that families stay together. I also would like to just underscore the fact that despite the occupant of the White House attempts to marginalize us and to silence us, please know that we are more than 4 people. We ran on a mandate to advocate for and to represent those ignored, left out, and left behind. Our squad is big. Our squad includes any person committed to building a more equitable and just world. And that is the work that we want to get back to. And given the size of this squad, in this great nation, we will not be silenced.
Right now, the president is committing human rights abuses at the border, keeping children in cages, and having human beings drinking out of toilets. This president, who has been credibly accused of committing multiple crimes, including colluding with foreign government to interfere with our election. This is a president who has overseen the most corrupt administration in our history and pursued an agenda to allow millions of Americans to die from a lack of health care while he transfers millions of dollars in tax cuts to corporations. This is a president who has said, grab women by the pussy. This is a president who's called black athletes sons of bitches. This is a president who has called black people who come from black and brown countries shitholes. This is a president who has equated neo-Nazis with those who protest against them in Charlottesville. This is a president who has openly violated the very value our country aspires to uphold: equality under the law, religious liberty, equal protection, and protection from persecution. And to distract from that, he's launching a blatantly racist attack on 4 duly elected members of the United States House of Representatives, all of whom are women of color.
The recent tweets and words from the president are simply a continuation of his racist and xenophobic playbook. We cannot allow these hateful actions by the president to distract us from the critical work to hold this administration accountable to the inhumane conditions at the border that is separating children from their loved ones and caging them up in illegal, horrific conditions.
This president operates in complete bad faith. He does not operate in good faith. And so that's one thing. But second to the previous question as well, weak minds and leaders challenge loyalty to our country in order to avoid challenging and debating the policy. This president does not know how to make the argument that Americans do not deserve health care. He does not know how to defend his policies. So what he does is attack us personally. And that is what this is all about. He can't look a child in the face, and he can't look all Americans in the face and justify why this country is throwing them in cages. So instead, he tells us that I should go back to the great borough of the Bronx and make it better. And that's what I'm here to do.
Leading off our discussion tonight, Mark Thompson, the host of the Make It Plain daily podcast. Maria Teresa Kumar, president and CEO of Voto Latino and an MSNBC contributor. And Rick Wilson, a Republican strategist and a contributor to the Daily Beast. He is the author of Everything Trump touches dies. Mark, let me start with you, and just I leave it open to your reaction to what we've seen in the last 24 hours.
Pleasure to be here with you, Lawrence. Those 4 women were incredible. And they represent America. America looks like that squad more and more every day. It's blacker, it's browner, it's more diverse, it's more female. And for Donald Trump to attack them, I'm still not sure what he's thinking. I know he's desperate, and you and I have talked about it ad nauseum. He's trying to appeal to some base, but I just don't see the majority of American voters in 2020 going along with this anymore. I commend you for being as consistent as you've been.
A majority never went along with it. So he managed to squeak in the Electoral College formula, not the vote.
With some of the help you mentioned, by the way. I appreciate you for mentioning the other help he got. But whatever the number is, the plurality even, I just don't see people continue to go along with this. Ayanna Presley mentioned in the press conference how she's been stopped in the airport by Republicans who said, you know, we don't support you. We voted for Donald Trump, but we don't agree with what he said about you either. You've been consistently documenting and reporting his history of racism. That's the one thing that he has been most consistent about. People may say that he got away with the Mueller report. There was nothing that came out of the Justice Department. But the one thing that did come from the Justice Department, as we know, was in 1973. He and his family were on, it was on the record. It was documented. They were guilty of housing discrimination here in the city of New York. So that is the history of his family, and Donald Trump is a racist.
Maria Teresa Kumar, this does seem, it feels to me like it is a change, but a change primarily in the American news media, and the comfort level of the mainstream American news media with actually now facing and addressing the President of the United States as a racist. And there you see the Charlotte Observer right there in their editorial declaring him a racist president.
That's exactly right, Lawrence. You and I and the folks on this panel, we knew what he was when he came down that escalator, and we never thought twice. And I think it's a challenge, the fact that the media, it's taken the mainstream news media so long to actually come to terms with this. And part of it is, quite frankly, is that we have to diversify our newsrooms, because you could have talked to any person of color when he was talking about birtherism, and we immediately heard that dog whistle loud and clear. There was no question that this president was a racist. So this is more of how do we diversify the newsroom so we can have different opinions that reflect the American people, that really reflect our opinions. And this is particularly important right now, Lawrence, is because we need to be able to talk very plainly, very clearly, and say a spade is a spade, because this presidency, the presidential election coming up, has to be spoken in clear language that every single American could understand, that the stakes are so high. Because it is absolutely right that we have never had a president under so many investigations from cabinet members on down, and there's never been such a smell and stink of corruption under this president. And what he does very well is that he divides the American people and tries to put us into every different corner. And you know who figured out that that works really well for divisiveness? The Russians. And he's taking a playbook from the Russians to making sure that this is the only way that he can get back into the White House, is to ensure that he's stoking those fears. And we just need to make sure that the news media is talking very clearly, very plainly, and calling a spade a spade.
Well, here's something we've never seen before. The minority leader of the United States Senate, who is now Chuck Schumer, calling the President of the United States the devil. Let's watch this.
My Republican friends, he's not backing off. Where are you when something this serious, this bigoted, this un-American happens? If you're saying to yourselves, well, he got us our big tax cut. Well, he's taking regulations off big corporations. Well, he pulled out of the Paris Accords. We have to go along with this racism. You're making a deal with the devil. It's so wrong.
Rick Wilson, is this a campaign strategy? Is this Donald Trump and his campaign advisors thinking, well, our only hope is going for the voters we already have and energizing them and somehow getting them to come and try to squeak out that electoral formula once again?
Absolutely, Lawrence. And as everyone else has stated on this show, it has been obvious for a very, very long time, from the long arc of his dad to redlining to the Central Park Five to birtherism to this stuff today. You know, this guy, he's racist adjacent in the very best day of his life. but this is full-on racist, and you can't avoid it. You can't pretend it doesn't exist. And as every presidential re-election is a referendum on the incumbent, this is a referendum on the incumbent, and Republicans and voters in this country are going to have to decide if the base activation strategy, which he is quite clearly pursuing, is sufficient to let them cover up the fact that they're going to have to go out and cast a vote. They're going to have to go in that voting booth and say, oh, well, oh my gosh, it's Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump. I'm kind of squishy. I don't know. Now they have to seriously go in there and say to themselves, I know this guy is one pointy white hat short of a Klan rally. I know that this guy is an outright, overt, flagrant racist, and that is the end of the day. That's the decision folks are going to have to make in the voting booth come November of next year, and it's going to be one that I think has a lot of consequences that knock on from here, not only for Trump but for the Republican Party.
Mark, it's such a good point, because when the evidence gets larger and larger and larger, the voter had a certain amount of evidence that Donald Trump was racist last time around. And I know some Trump voters who I never really thought of in that category. I still don't think of them in that category. But now they have so much, they have years more evidence, and they have this weekend as evidence. And for the Trump voters I know, who I do not think are racist, I don't see how they can explain their vote if they were to go and vote for Donald Trump again.
Yeah, I don't see how either. I think that this really exposes him. It's even more transparent. And let's not forget, what brought us to this point. He's reacting to the Squad and others decrying what he's doing with these ICE raids. And I'm sorry, I'm just made this way. I can't see that any other way but what happened after World War II with Japanese internment, what happened on the Trail of Tears, and for that matter, with all due respect to my Jewish friends, there were children of the Holocaust who were turned away here in the United States who were refugees, not to mention those that were rounded up in Germany. So, I don't see how anybody can see this for just what it is. These ICE raids are absurd. They are racist, targeting people in the way that they do. So you're right, Lawrence, people have no excuse. And as a matter of fact, Dr. King said the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. We in America have the power to bring about that justice in November 2020, if not sooner.
Maria Teresa, the threatened raids this weekend did not materialize as expected, and so Donald Trump did not have cruel video to show to his supporters today of families being dragged out of their houses and people being pulled out of their cars, or however they wanted to do it. And so he didn't have that drama to show them today, but he did have this. Maria Teresa. Sorry.
Oh, so sorry. I thought you were going to show a clip. No, he didn't have it. But I think at the end of the day, he also did what he does best, and that is instill incredible fear in the Latino community. And we have to make sure that we are organized, that we are paying attention, that we are informed. Individuals that did have ICE come into knocking on the door, they knew what to do. So there were areas in Southern California, there were areas in New York where the activist community had done such a wonderful job that people knew what their rights were. And that's why the president today said, sure, we rounded people up and we had warrants. He didn't have them. He didn't have anything, but he caused fear. And when we look and we connect the dots, the moment that president went down the escalators and declared that he basically was putting a target on Mexicans, saying that they were rapists, every Latino in this country heard the dog whistle. We knew that he was talking about us. Yep. And when you connect the dots and recognize at the same time, this president was trying to include a citizenship question in the census and became raving mad because it was basically thrown out by the Supreme Court. The reason he wanted it, and these are his own GOP strategists, he was trying to create Republican white non-Hispanic districts, not even Republican districts, but Republican white non-Hispanic. That is telling every single person that what he is trying to create is a minority with majority of individuals. And this is why everybody should be on edge, is that my child right now, who is under 6 years old, they represent the largest generation of Americans, but they also represent the majority of minority, meaning that there is no majority. How do we actually move forward as a country? How do we prepare our nation in this beautiful fabric that we are to actually achieve that arc of justice that we aspire to every single day if we do not actually hold what he does every single day that is reprehensible and anti-patriotic and anti-American? We have to be present, and we have to make sure that we are talking about what our possibility is versus having him constantly trying to crush what we are.
Maria Teresa Kumar gets an eloquent last word in this opening segment tonight. Thank you for joining us. Rick Wilson, thank you for helping start us off tonight. And Mark Thompson, thank you for joining us. Mark, the new podcast is the Make It Plain Daily Podcast.
That's right, makeitplain.com.
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
All right,
That's
great.
right. Thank you.
Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.